When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the silicone implants will melt into a goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace and must be cleaned up once it is cooled. In 2008, Kansas man Corey McFerrin called 911 claiming there was something wrong with his girlfriend. When authorities arrived, they were horrified to find that his 35-year-old girlfriend had been sitting on the toilet for at least 2 years. Many 9/11 rescue dogs were becoming depressed because they weren't finding any live bodies. Rescue workers had to constantly bury themselves to trick the dogs into thinking that they actually saved someone. For 40 years, there was a federal aviation rule that allowed commercial airline pilots to be armed with guns. But this policy was rescinded by the FAA just 2 months before 9/11. After all commercial flights were forced to land, only one non-military plane was allowed to fly. It was delivering anti-venom to a snake handler in Florida who was bitten by the deadly taipan snake. Released in June of 2000, video game Deus Ex didn't include the Twin Towers in its skyline due to technical limitations. Coincidentally, the in-game explanation was that they were destroyed by a terrorist attack. In 1954, Ann Hodges was hit with a softball-sized meteorite while taking a nap in her Alabama home. She remains the only known human to ever be hit by a meteorite. This man painted a girl inspired by his imagination, and when he met someone who looked exactly like her, he married her. In 1902, the Mount Pelée eruption killed all 30,000 people in a village except for a criminal who was on death row. He was locked up deep underground in solitary confinement, which served as the perfect shelter from the blast. December 6, 1969 is considered rock and roll's all-time worst day since 4 people were killed during a Rolling Stones concert. But the overall population at the concert didn't change because 4 babies were born during the show as well. In 1977, the University of Evansville men's basketball team was involved in a tragic plane crash. The crash killed everyone on the team except for one young man who didn't make the trip due to an injury. 2 weeks later, the only remaining player was killed by a drunk driver. Dennis Vashurin looks like a young teenage boy, but he's actually 36 years old. Due to a genetic malfunction, Dennis stopped aging sometime during his teens, but otherwise he's completely healthy. Trish Vickers was a blind author who wrote 26 pages of her first novel without realizing that her pen had run out of ink. But local police were able to use forensic equipment to decipher the missing words, and the book was published on the day she died. A man who suffered a stroke in 2004 permanently lost the ability to feel sad. In 1982, the Almeida family lost their pet tortoise Manuela while their house was being renovated. 30 years later, they were cleaning out their attic after their father died and miraculously found Manuela still alive. They think she was able to survive by eating termites in the furniture that their father was hoarding. In 1871, a wealthy man survived the sinking of a ship, but it left him with a horrible fear of the ocean. 41 years later, he was finally able to overcome his fear and sail again, only to die in the sinking of that new ship, the Titanic. In 2008, a 23-year-old Vietnamese woman suffered from a mysterious food allergy that aged her about 50 years in just a few days. Doctors remain stunned on the actual nature of the condition, but most agree that it's irreversible. Morticians often use these spiky contacts to keep the eyes of the dead closed during funeral viewings. A girl who grew up in a concentration camp drew this when she was asked to draw a picture of home in 1948. When a Filipino fisherman's anchor got stuck in a rock, he decided to take it home with him as a good luck charm. He kept it under his bed for 10 years until his house burned down in a fire. Luckily, he soon found out that it was actually the largest pearl ever found, valued at right around $100 million. In the 1980s, a family owned a ceramic factory in California called Oscar Ceramics. But in 1987, the factory was revealed to be an illegal crematorium. This only happened because a passerby who happened to be a Holocaust survivor recognized the smell of burning bodies from his time at Auschwitz. In March of 2005, the Powerball had 130 second-place winners, totaling $19 million in prizes. While lottery officials initially suspected fraud, it turned out that the Wonton Food Company had correctly predicted the winning numbers and had them printed on thousands of fortune cookies. The fortune read, "All of the preparation you've done will finally pay off." The Hinsgavel dagger from Denmark is just under 4,000 years old. It's considered to be one of the most impressive examples of ancient flint knapping. The earliest known sunglasses were created by Inuit hunters about 2,000 years ago. They were made to shield their eyes from the blinding glare of sunlight reflecting off the snow. This painting of a Yoda-like creature was found in a 15th century Polish manuscript. This 2,300-year-old bronze Gaelic helmet was found by French archaeologists in 2004. Researchers are still not sure of exactly what it was designed for. The Swedish warship Vasa is easily the world's best preserved 17th century ship. In 1628, it sank less than a mile into its maiden voyage and was recovered 333 years later almost completely intact. The son of President Theodore Roosevelt was the oldest man in the D-Day invasion at the age of 56. Despite arthritis and a heart condition, he stormed the beach with a cane and survived. He died from a heart attack a month later and was posthumously awarded a Medal of Honor. The fighting on Normandy Beach was so intense that 4% of its sand is still made up of broken down shrapnel from D-Day. In Saving Private Ryan, the Omaha Beach scene was so realistic that many veterans left the theater during the opening scene, claiming that it was the most realistic depiction of combat that they'd ever seen. While his comrades were being shot all around him, a Canadian piper named Bill Millen was playing the bagpipes during the storming of Normandy. German snipers later said they didn't shoot him because they thought he'd gone mad and wasn't considered a threat. In 2012, a New York woman donated her kidney to save the life of her boss. But her boss then fired her when she took too long to recover from the operation. Artist William Udermolen was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 1995. Over the next 5 years, he drew these self-portraits of himself which displayed the devastating effects of the disease. The reason you wake up right before you're about to die in a dream is because your brain doesn't know what it's actually like to experience death. In 2008, a Brazilian priest strapped 1,000 balloons onto a lawn chair and rode it into the sky as part of a fundraiser. He was able to reach an altitude of 20,000 feet before losing contact with authorities. Actor Jake Lloyd played young Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. But at the age of 12, he retired from acting permanently due to bullying and destroyed all of his Star Wars memorabilia. Years later, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after being involved in a high-speed car chase with police. The day before her daughter died, Casey Anthony had searched for foolproof suffocation methods on Mozilla Firefox. But police overlooked this crucial evidence because they only checked her search history from Internet Explorer. In 2001, a man donated his kidney to his wife when she was suffering from renal failure. 8 years later, when his wife filed for divorce, he demanded her to return the kidney or pay over $1 million in penalties. In 2015, a woman claimed that she could smell Parkinson's disease. To test this, doctors gave her 12 shirts to smell and 6 of them were from Parkinson's patients. She correctly identified the 6 shirts but also chose one from the control group. 8 months later, that person was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The most expensive shot in silent film history was for Buster Keaton's 1926 film, The General. The stunt had a budget of $42,000, which would be over $600K today. This entire 2 billion skyscraper in Mumbai is the private residence of India's richest man Mukesh Ambani and his family of 5. The 27-story, 400,000 square foot home is complete with 9 elevators, a 168-car garage, and a 50-person movie theater. The building apparently employs a staff of 600 people to keep things running. Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi painting was sold for $72 in 1958, then for $10,000 in 2005. It then sold for $75 million in 2013, and again for $127 million the very next year. Today it's estimated to be worth well over $400 million. A woman named Claire bought a card table for $25 at a yard sale because she thought it looked nice. 30 years later, she found out that it was one of only 6 tables in the world made by furniture makers John Seymour and Son. So she brought it to an auction and made a quick $540,000. A Brazilian police officer was saved when the Nokia in his back pocket stopped the bullet that was fired at him. On January 8, 1942, Stephen Hawking was born on the 300th anniversary of Galileo's death. 76 years later, he died on Pi Day, March 14th, which also happened to be Einstein's 139th birthday. Known as the Great Star of Africa, the largest clear-cut diamond in the world now belongs to King Charles III. The 530-carat gem was mined in South Africa in 1905 and has an estimated value of $400 million. The rarest and most valuable wood in the world is African blackwood. It costs close to $20,000 per pound since the tree must grow for more than 50 years before the wood is ready. The most expensive license plate in the world was purchased by an Abu Dhabi businessman for a staggering $14 million. This makes the number 1 plate more valuable than the most expensive car ever made. Discovered in 2003, the Virgin Rainbow Opal is one of the most beautiful and expensive gemstones in the world. It literally glows in the dark and is worth well over $1 million. In 2018, the world's most expensive bottle of vodka was stolen in Denmark. The bottle was made from silver and gold and had a diamond-encrusted cap, making it worth $1.3 million. Miraculously, it was found empty at a construction site a few days later.